Thank you, everybody. So welcome back. If you haven't heard me, I'm Anne Ravanona, founder and CEO of Global InvestHer. And I'm delighted today to have with me some fantastic investors who are going to explain to you why you should invest in women entrepreneurs and how they bring better returns. So I'd like to invite our distinguished guest. I was going to extinguished guest. That wouldn't be very nice if I made you extinguished. So I'd like to invite our panelists to unmute themselves and introduce themselves very, very quickly. So Sarah, shall we, or whoever we go in the order, let's start. Jyri, let's go with the man, the only man on the panel. Can you just tell us a few words about yourself for those who don't know you already?
Sure thing, and thanks for having me. My name is Jyri Engeström. I'm general partner of Yes VC. We're based in San Francisco, but I'm currently in Helsinki. I run the fund. It's an early stage fund with my partner, Katarina Fake, and we invest typically between $250,000 to $1.5 million into very early stage companies across all kinds of domains, looking for founders of movements.
Fantastic. Thank you. Sarah, do you want to say hi? I don't know if she's here or if she's unmuted. I actually don't see Sarah. Okay, well, I think she's going to be joining us very shortly. So while Sarah is joining us, sorry about that. Pauliina, let's hear from you.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So my name is Pauliina, and I'm investment director at Helsinki-based early stage VC firm Maki VC. So we invest in deep tech and brand-driven companies across consumer and enterprise spaces, mainly in the Nordics, although we do have a global investment mandate, so technically can invest anywhere globally. And tickets range from 200K to 2 million euros, so very early things.
Fantastic. So I hope all the founders in the audience are listening to all of you investors and say, I'm going to go and check out you. I'm going to check out Pauliina. I'm going to check out Anya. Anya, tell us a bit about yourself and your fund.
Hi, Anne. Thanks very much for having me. So I'm a founding partner of Voulez Capital. We launched about a couple of years ago, and we invest exclusively in companies that include female founders on the original team. So very much a topic close to our hearts. We typically do early stage seed, mostly because if you don't fix seed, you can't really have a later stage deal flow pipeline. And our tickets are typically about 250K sterling all the way up to about 2.5 million. So
brilliant. So UK and Europe is your playground.
Mostly Europe focused, although we do have a global mandate, but we've decided to start focusing on Europe. Mostly because we know it really well. So there's plenty of work to be done here.
Fantastic. So we will let Sarah join us as she comes through. And if she doesn't, well, we still have, oh, here she is. There you go, Sarah. How are you? And welcome to the discussion.
Hi there. Hi. Took me a while to get on. How are you all? Good to see everyone.
Good to see you, Sarah, and welcome. Do you want to say a few words about yourself and about Beyond the Billion?
Sure, of course. I think some of you would have already heard from my co-founder, Shelly Porges, who did the keynote yesterday at the LP Summit, but my name is Sarah Chen. I'm the other co-founder, so I like to call it the dynamic duo that is the Beyond the Billion. We are a global consortium of venture investors and limited partner investors that are pledged to and have started actively deploying over $1 billion to its women-founded companies. So these are venture-backable women-founded companies, and this is a global consortium. We have over 90 funds right now that are investing across the stages. So I'm sure this is something we'll talk about today, Anne, but we have funds that are investing across AI, blockchain, clean tech, fintech, you name it, because women are innovating across the board and are driving returns through diversity. And we are so excited to be here today talking about this important topic. And I'm seeing Anya as well, who's part of our consortium. So a lot of these funds, some are gender lens, but some are really just SaaS funds and things like that have seen the value and continue to see the value of investing in women. So for us, this started as the $1 billion fund for women, as some of you may know our story, in October 2018. But now, we're beyond the billion because we surpassed the $1 billion mark last year, and you were with us in Paris, Anne.
Yeah.
So that was very, really, I guess, a testament to the fact that, this is truly the time, and we are seeing investors continuing to reap the returns and wanting to do more in this space. So That's a little bit about Beyond the Billion. And, I'm originally from Malaysia. I have a little bit of background in corporate VC, which brought me to where we connect here, which is Women in Leadership and Venture Capital.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. So let's dive right in. I want, as a shaping, framing part of this discussion, to let's start giving the figures as to how important, women entrepreneurs are in the different ecosystems and the higher returns that they bring. So Anya, can we start with you? Can you give us some key figures about funding for women entrepreneurs, the trends and, the return on investments that you're seeing in both UK and Europe? Let's start off with you.
Of course. So I think we have about 20 years worth of data from all sorts of different sources that shows consistently that women-run businesses do better. And obviously the reason for this is, there are multiple reasons for this, but fundamentally the more diverse your management team, the more rounded management decisions you're going to face, and therefore the better those companies are able to serve their customers. And why women are so important in that mix is because over 80% of spending decisions, in some industries even more than that, are driven by women. So if you don't meet their needs, therefore you're creating products and services that are not quite meeting your customers' kind of requirements. So it's really critical that the companies that we're building are sensitive to those needs. I've had a few kind of male-run businesses turn around to me in some digital spaces and say, hey, we used the security software that we've created and suddenly women are using it for something completely different. We had to rebrand and pivot. I'm like, well, if you had a woman management team, she would have told you that was one of the key applications for this. So for me, it's a no-brainer. At the end of the day, I don't want to fund only kind of women-run companies. I want to fund gender-balanced companies. And that's what we're trying to get to. The reason why we don't invest in kind of all male teams is purely to eliminate the bias from our own decision-making process. In terms of numbers, it's only the last 2-3 years that we've had some more clear numbers in terms of investment in women and kind of gender disaggregated data. And in the UK, for example, the latest figures show that less than 1% of VC capital is going to a woman-run business, and maybe another 9% or so to gender balance or gender kind of inclusive teams.
So even worse than the statistics I just shared earlier, which global trends. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's worse than the global numbers. Because I think the global numbers is around 2.5%. The other interesting thing and quite scary thing over the last year, obviously this has been a very unusual year for so many of us, is that all the numbers that just come out in the US and in Europe are showing a decline in early stage investment. Obviously, there's been a decline in VC investment overall, but if you look at the different stages of life cycle, most of that decline has happened in seed stage, which means that's where women get impacted the most. And actually, most numbers are showing a marked decline in investment in women. So we're back to about 2, 3, 4 years ago in terms of numbers, and that's a scary thought because that's your future pipeline for the next 5-10 years. So the question is, how do we address this? How do we change this? And that's probably why we're having discussions like this, why we do what we do, why you, Anne, are doing what you do, and you, Sarah, as well. Because each in our own ways, we're trying to kind of address a piece of the puzzle and work with our colleagues in the industry to change those numbers.
Thank you, Anya. So, Sarah, would you like to add anything from your global perspective? But I would say I'd be really interested in hearing from the Asian perspective, because I'm going to let Jyri talk about US and Pauliina talk about Nordics, just so that we have an idea. But yeah, tell us your perspective.
Thanks, Anne. So, what's interesting, I think in COVID, in the early months, and I think this is a general landscape before I dive into gender diverse teams, but in the early months, people were sort of really worried. There was a bit of a panic of uncertainty, which there still is now, but the deal numbers have picked up in Q4, and we're starting to see a little bit more of an upward tick there. But in the early months, I think what's been interesting, and this is a quote, and this is a bit of an Asian flavor from one of our partners, Gobi Partners, where we asked them, how do you think entrepreneurs and especially women-founded companies, gender diverse teams, fare in a time of a black swan event, right? Which is this case exactly, which is you don't know what to expect. There is no vaccine yet. What do we do? How do we pivot? And what he said was really revealing in why we love entrepreneurship so much, in that the nature of startups itself is that it is nimble. And therefore they're able to pivot and think very quickly, because otherwise you don't survive.
Yeah.
right? So it's been very telling, especially with women-founded companies, because I'm sure you've already been through the numbers. And yesterday you did a great presentation, Anne, about how when women even raise capital, they raise about $1 million less, a third of what male-founded teams get, right? And what we're talking about here is, in today's environment, even 88% of all venture capital funding going to all male teams. Now, that's not right. That doesn't mean that, that is representative of the talent that we see in the world. So what's been really interesting is that the women-founded companies, because they are already sort of, this is, I hate to say it, but it's a positive in this environment where they raise less and they're able to be so resourceful and make the best of every environment. This is true to this current environment. So we're actually seeing women-founded companies do really, really well. So they've done their pivots very quickly, and they were able to actually, beyond just survive, a lot of them are actually thriving. So one of the examples, I'll give you a bit of a North American and Asia, which is my expertise here. So in North America, Canada, what we're seeing is one of the companies, one of our women-founded, women-led companies led by Leslie, it's Dr. Leslie Goldie's Thornhill Medical. And they created essentially what is like a mobile grade ventilator. So it's a mobile ICU. And of course, in this time, they've quadrupled their production. And one of our partner funds, Qantas, that invested in them, are of course, extremely happy to see this, where Justin Trudeau actually said this is the company that we're going to continue to work with to address the pandemic. So women founders are not only just thriving, they are addressing the pandemic. And this is why we believe so much in investing in women-founded companies and gender diverse teams. To your point, Anya, it is in the diversity of opinions. So we too, in BeyondThe Billion, actually, we have women, men who are investors. 80% of our funds are led by women and people of color, which is unusual in the venture capital industry to begin with. But this diversity of thought and opinion is what helps us address the big problems. Right. So it's not beyond what Anya said, which is to address the women as a consumer. By bringing women's perspective, you look at things differently. It is, and we're starting from women, but I believe it is, our background, so on and so forth, which brings us to today, which is how do we address this terrible time, right? And what can we do from that? And women founders are doing well in Asia as well. Air Wallets, while people were struggling to think about what next, they closed a round of $160 million, and this is a fintech, right? So they've gone beyond foreign exchange. She's originally Chinese, and this is a Melbourne company and invested into by our Asian funds and MasterCard as well. So two of our funds invested together into this company. So we're seeing a lot of good news, and I'll pause that. But I'm really optimistic about the future for women-founded companies and why we must continue to back them.
I love it. Thank you, Sarah. And it's great to have the Asian and the US perspective, and to actually give the names of those companies doing well. And I love the positive message that you're saying is, hey, not only do we bring higher returns that both yourself and Anya have said so far, but we can pivot faster, and there are some amazing companies coming out of this Black Swan event and doing extremely well. So let's go to the only man on the panel, Jyri. Can you tell us a little bit about your perspective from Silicon Valley, and what you're seeing and why, what's the research saying? Because you're in the heart of all of this. So okay, the figures are going down for funding female founders. Tell us a bit more from your perspective.
Yeah, I think, there's both good news and bad news, right? The good news is that there's this rising awareness as we can see, right? And we're seeing more women across the board in better positions in all kinds of companies. The only issue, though, is that the one place where they're missing is in product leadership or in places where they're actually responsible for P&L, which is really what matters. And similarly, I thought perhaps there's a lot of statistics that have been thrown around, I guess, today already. But the one thing that really kind of caught my eye regarding the U.S. was a survey of people now. Everyone's working from home, obviously, in California and elsewhere in the U.S. as well. And I think they said, 80% of the respondents who were guys reported spending more time with their children. whereas only 3% of the women reported that their husbands were spending more time with their children. So, and I think it's really telling, right? Because there's this discrepancy in perception of what's equal and what's right and what's the contribution of everyone. And obviously women have been disproportionately affected by COVID through, you know, you look at anything from losing their jobs to any kind of statistics, and, you know, pretty much every time women are worse off than men. So this has been a really, really awful thing this, you know, this year, I think, in many ways. But I don't know, you know, I look at our portfolio, 2 of our top performing companies are run by women. So the nice thing about a conversation like this, I think, is to highlight the successes, and there are more of those, and we should celebrate that. So, you know, I'm optimistic. I think, you know, time is on our side, demographics, you know, we all kind of know what the future looks like, and it doesn't look like Donald Trump, and it doesn't look like all male-led VCs or any kind of founding teams, right? So it's pretty obvious. Now we just need to execute and not slip. So
I love it. And that's why I would, you know, help remind us of the call to action for investors and everybody here to join the commitment tracker after this session and throughout the next day and a half, because we want to hear, put your money where your mouth is, put your time and action where your mouth is, and actually commit to helping that change come faster. Pauliina, over to you. Can you give us your perspective from the Nordics? We want to hear more about, you know, figures on funding for female founders and your perspective, and maybe some success stories there too.
Sure. So I can't do anything but echo the previous speakers here, in the sense that there's a lot to be done still. So for instance, I would love to see more clear data, but for instance, if we look at the latest numbers from Unconventional Ventures report, that also highlighted that companies founded by women attract a very tiny share of all VC money deployed in the Nordics as well. So for instance, 93% of VC money went to all male founding teams, 6% for mixed teams, and only 1.3% to all female founding teams, and that's in the Nordics. And what the 93% figure also kind of mirrors is the fact that men tend to raise bigger funding rounds on average, as I guess in the other regions as well. So definitely lots to do here as well.
So, but I think what we're seeing is the current, you know, we don't want to be here talking about doom and gloom, because we're here talking about the size of this opportunity and how big it is. But I think it's important for us to frame, this is the reality now, and this is where we want to go. And our vision is that we're going to change that. And everybody on this panel today, we're all change makers who believe that intimately. So, Pauliina, let's stick with you. Can you tell us, therefore, how at Maki VC, how are you trying to capture more value on investing in female founders? What are you doing?
Yes. So where to start? So first of all, I think what I want to highlight is that we invest in great teams first and foremost.
Yeah.
So although we talk about that we would invest in deep tech or brand-driven companies, we never, you know, invest to check a box. And what's paramount to us is partnering with founders who we believe in and who are kind of challenging the existing category norms. And if we look at where we are now, I think 1/3 of our investments have went to mixed teams. And out of the investments that I've led, I think the number is 50-50. 25 to all female teams, but as said, even like the Nordics have a way to go, and even though we are ahead of average a little bit, we still ourselves as a fund have tons of things to do. But basically, so we invest in great teams, and so although we are ahead of numbers in some sense, what I want to say that I don't think we've never once kind of thought that we are investing in a woman at the time of the initial investment, but always that we are investing in the best possible founder for that given idea. And we are, as a VC fund, it's our business model to you know, make returns for our limited partners. So that's the kind of a ground for what we do. And I truly believe that diverse teams, not only all male teams or not only all female teams, are the ones that perform best long term. But that being said, I think we've seen some incredibly strong founders in our female founders in our deal flow. And I do somehow believe that still in 2020, unfortunately, women who found startups and managed to raise funding have pushed through so many obstacles on the way that they tend to be more headstrong maybe than the mediocre man, and that's kind of visible in our own portfolio as well. But kind of on the practical side, so what do we try to do to ensure, because it's also an equality question in our kind of minds, is that that everyone gets a fair chance with us, and obviously that's also to maximize our own profits. Obviously, I think we want to make smart investment decisions.
Yeah.
So we try to be easy to approach and also actually de-bias our investment process. So for instance, what we've done is we've paid a lot of attention to our own branding. For instance, our website is full of, I think, unusually bright colors, or we try to make sure that we present diverse founders in the visuals or in the photos. Our tonality is easy to go in, and we're very much open for cold intros. And then on the kind of investment analysis level, we try to make sure that, as said, we de-bias the process. So for instance, last fall, we partnered with Inclusive, with Atomico and Northzone, and challenge all the European VC firms to undergo this unconscious bias training. Our team did that as well, and that was really eye-opening, as I think every one of us has some form of biases that we suffer from. We try to use same repetitive questionnaire when we talk with founders for the first time, and obviously after the investment also try and support our own portfolio companies in building diverse teams. And as said, we believe in diversity.
So Pauliina, I'm going to have to move over to Sarah because I want to make sure that all our panelists get to answer that. But I love what you're saying, because it is very important to make diverse founders feel welcome and part of the branding, both the shop front that you show, and not just shop front because it's part of who you are and your values as a fund. That's very important. And then the fact that you're going through the unconscious bias training is fantastic, because I think we all need to do that. Sarah, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing at the $1 Billion Fund to help, Beyond the Billion, to help, women entrepreneurs get funded?
So I think for a woman entrepreneur who's tuning in, the first step for you is, I think, and this, our niche is really in supporting the funds themselves, right? So to ensure that the top of the capital stack, what you talked about, Pauliina, in that the limited partner investors are continuing to support the funds that ultimately invest in women. But what this means is, guess what? All the funds on our website. So if you go to our website, beyondthebillion.com, what you'll see is over 90 funds that have said essentially that the welcome mat is open for women, and we're open for business. And this has been really good in a lot of our partner funds deal flow, actually, to see women who are innovating across the board. And as I said, across stages as well. So there's a filter function. You can do that. And because actually the good thing about being virtual is we're doing things like this, where it becomes a little bit more approachable, where you can hear from investors and what they're thinking as well. So just a note to you entrepreneurs, not all VCs are rich. In fact, it is an entrepreneurial endeavor, and it is hard as anything. So I will not swear here, but it is a hard business. So, be also mindful about what your VCs are going through. And, what we do is we do investor events, and now occasionally based on, interest points and topics, of the time, we do open some of our events to entrepreneurs as well. And I actually have heard back from a lot of entrepreneurs, founders that have attended our sessions and said, hey, I never thought that this is what a VC goes through, and this is what they think about.
Exactly.
So that's been super helpful in just understanding like what makes sense, right? And also I think, this is a whole topic altogether, but really, if you're just getting started as a founder, really thinking through if venture capital is for you. Ultimately, we're all in it for the agenda, which is to continue to elevate women, but it is also about financial returns, right? Yes. So we still want to see that hockey stick chart, that hockey stick graph, and really, really fast growth, which may not be for everyone. And as I say, venture capital is a great solution, but it's not a solution for everything. But we want to see more women innovating fast, though. So the more the better, as everyone around the panel has said, if it's 93%, 80% that's going to all male teams, that's not right. No. And if you are I heard this recently from actually Gary Tan from Initialized Capital. Sometimes, you think you don't want to be a leader, but sometimes authority chooses you and you need to step up. And if there's one call to action for you women founders is to think big, right? If you're raising a fund, raise a big one, because the time to close a fund is just as long as 18 months at least in this environment. 12 months if you're good, 6 months if you actually have all those LP warmed up already. But if you're raising a capital for your company, aim bigger and shoot for what you truly can deliver. So
Fantastic.
My call
and I think
action.
it's very important. So I would really encourage, so Global InvestHer, we are partners with Beyond the Billion, and we're very proud to be so. So we promote, like we put links to their page with all that list of investors and funds who have pledged to it. Anya, let's come over to you, please. And we're also partnering with Anya. So tell us a little bit more about what you do at Voulez Capital to help female founders, which is a lot.
Well, we work every single day through our own portfolio and through our own kind of mandate. But beyond that, by the way, apologies, my toddler just woke up from a nap, so the usual juggling begins. But what we have tried to do is we looked at the VC landscape with a very fresh pair of eyes, because I come from the other side of the table. I love building businesses, and for me, it was always about, well, how do we fix the kind of the infrastructure, not just the premise of let's invest in women, but how do we take it a step forward? And for me, something that became very obvious in the early days, that it wasn't just about saying you're going to put more money towards female founders, it was about how you're actually doing it day to day. And that's how Fair Venture principles were born about 1.5 years ago. And for us, there's a way of codifying how we operate day to day as a fund, how we work with the female founders, but also what kind of culture and behavior we facilitate and encourage within our portfolio companies. And it's also a way for them to keep us accountable. Obviously, it's great to have all sorts of charters and all sorts of kind of things that you can sign up to. Practical. It's something that we're able to put on our website, which we have done, and that female founders and their male co-founders can look at and say, actually, that resonates with us. And a lot of it was about rebalancing the relationship between the investor and the founder. A lot of it was about alignment of interests between kind of the lead investor coming in, but also earlier investors and the founders themselves, and leveling up the cap table a little bit. And that created a much more inclusive environment for decision making, rather than an us and them kind of culture. So for us, that was critical. COVID has been a very difficult time for a lot of people, but actually we're in the middle of launching a business with one of our companies. So it's also sort of a lot of opportunity. And what we found was that having that more transparent, more open, more balanced relationship has been a huge pulling factor for a lot of female founders. They come to us and say, we would never have considered VC money if it wasn't for you. And that for me has been a huge validation of how we work day to day, and the messaging that we send out there to them. That people who would not have gone down this route are actually considering doing so based on how we do.
Because they can see that there are investors who actually care and who actually believe in building diverse teams and funding those diverse teams. And I would encourage everybody to check out Voulez Capital's website, go to the Fair Venture Principles to check out in more detail, because it's fantastic. Over to you, Jyri. What are you doing at YesVC? And if you can make it really fast, because we need to wrap up super fast. This has gone faster. We always want to talk and need to share more about this. So Jyri, what are you doing at YesVC to help support female founders?
I'm just going to, in the interest of time, name a few sort of micro actions that I suggest. One is I'd love to see next time, we're on a panel talking about women entrepreneurs and VCs, if it were all guys, and then all you ladies were on all of the other panels where you're just talking about awesome founders and so on. So maybe next time let's do an all male panel about women.
Yes, love it. And Jan, if you're listening, and I'm sure he is.
And second, just in, if you're a boss, hire a woman. Don't be reasonable, but actually be unreasonable. If you're somebody who's a talented person who gets a lot of offers, work for a woman rather than work for a male boss. If you're a guy in a panel like this, shut up, let the women speak. And if you're a woman, speak up. You know, and if you're in a meeting and you're a guy, just wait and listen first and let a woman talk first and then talk. So, you know, generally, I think that actually it's not that somehow unfairly gives more bandwidth to women. It's that it makes you actually be better at what you do. That's
Very
at least
important messages,
my
Jyri.
philosophy.
I'm so glad you said it. In one word, Pauliina, your key tip to female founders looking for funding, real quick, lightning round.
Challenge your investor about the diversity in the investment team and in their current portfolio.
Love it. Okay, Anya, quick tip.
Transparency.
Sarah.
Building how.
Courage and aiming big.
Fantastic. And on that note, we were going to hand back over to the Arctic15 team. Thank you very much to all our panelists for a great panel. And check out the commitment checker. You've seen the link in the chat box. And we go on to the next session now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank